Like I mentioned, by the end of the day, we should have just two candidates. There are three still in the running. What can we say about them?
Well, what we can say, first of all, is I feel like we should play the music to the Twilight Zone, because there really is a sense of entering a different dimension here. To almost everyone watching in Britain, even members, Tory members watching this, are probably a little befuddled at this whole spectacle. It shows, A, how deeply divided, sharply polarized Britain has become, but more specifically, it shows how unshackled from reality, some people would say delusional, the Conservative Party has become, because it has given up any pretense of looking at the realities of Brexit, the complexities of Brexit, in the name of platitudes which have been made very clear by Europe are just not going to go down in any way, shape, or form. The three candidates who are left, right? The front runner, Boris Johnson, former Foreign Secretary, Michael Gove, Environment Secretary, and Jeremy Hunt, the current Foreign Secretary. To more or varying degrees, they have all said they would support a no deal if it came to that. They don't want a no deal, but they would support. It's something that the British Parliament has made clear under Theresa May that it has zero appetite for. It does not want, it will not allow a no deal. So that's up in the air as a question. How does that happen? To varying degrees, they had said they want to reopen the negotiations with Europe, something Europe has been clear at least 1,425 times. We are not renegotiating the deal. They are also, in the case of Boris Johnson, signally ready to remove the so-called Irish backstop. Remember, that was instituted in order to ensure that the Good Friday Agreement would be preserved and that you wouldn't have perhaps more troubles, on the Irish border there. He's willing to throw that away, remove it in the name of what he calls alternative arrangements. There is zero clarity from these leaders. They have issued platitudes, and platitudes which have absolutely no anchoring in reality. What a lot of the voters watching this, even those of a conservative bent, are still looking for is clarity. And in the absence of that, the Conservative Party has become so hardwired to the idea of Brexit. It is so much right now in their almost genetic composition, so to speak, that they have become, to a certain extent, they've disconnected this entire political campaign from the realities of what Brexit would mean, as they've seen over the past several years with Theresa May. I'll just say the one candidate, and this was hardly, this maverick, Rory Stewart, who was knocked out a couple of rounds ago. He was the one thing who asked the questions. He asked his fellow candidates there, he said, how could you change the Irish backstop when the EU says it's not up for renegotiation? He says, hi, friends, fellow party members, how are you going to reopen the negotiations of the withdrawal agreement when the EU says it is not up for renegotiation? And how can you force through a no deal when the British Parliament says it will not allow a no deal? He asked these questions, and the irony of Rory Stewart is he's not some liberal progressive radical. This is a guy who years ago would have been considered the staunchest of conservatives, a staunch Tory. He was for Tory austerity. He is pro-Theresa May's Brexit deal. This is a man who went to Eton and Oxford. So all of a sudden, it shows how far to the right the Tory party has gone, that a man like Rory Stewart all of a sudden sort of is seen by a lot of people as, too bad he's out of the race, because perhaps he at least had some clarity of vision. He seemed to be asking the right questions.
Now, considering all of that, some people would say perhaps it's better to just hold a general election.
Yeah, well, it's probably going to come to a general election because, for better or for worse, the next prime minister, and it's going to be one of these three men, Jeremy Hunt, Michael Gove, or Boris Johnson, is going to be right up against the exact same issues as Theresa May. Now, you can go on all day about how Theresa May, she bumbled Brexit. Few people are going to argue that. Her deal was voted down time and again, and she never opened up in time. She hardwired herself to the far right of her own party, and she is perhaps responsible for the degree of extra polarization we see in Britain today. That said, we still have the reality of how is the next prime minister going to persuade all the MPs in Parliament? Remember, this time it's not just the 313 Conservative MPs who are able to vote in this contest and Conservative Party members. It's going to be the entire Parliament. Non-Tories, how are they going to sell Theresa May's Brexit deal when Theresa May on 3 attempts wasn't able to do it? What magic potion are they going to pull out of their hat? And if they can't do that, how are they going to go back to Brussels and reopen a deal that Brussels says won't be reopened? The Luxembourg foreign minister restated it just the other day. He basically said, it's almost a read my lips moment. He says, what part of this do you not understand? We are not renegotiating the Brexit deal. So from Europe's perspective, looking over right now, this is sort of, like I said at the beginning, this whole race in the UK is taking place in a sort of political political twilight zone. They don't quite know what to make of it. It's going to be quite a spectacle to see what the next prime minister does, how short-lived that prime ministership will be, whether we have an immediate vote of no confidence followed by a general election, and what that's might reap.